how Albania became a Muslim country. Prior to Islamification, Christianity was the dominant religion in the region. Historians confirm that Christianity reached the Principality of Arbanon, which now encompasses modern-day Albania, in the 1st century. It is noted that Paul the Apostle proselytized the people to Christianity. However, as a result of it being a province within the Roman Empire, these early Albanian Christians were subject to persecution, though this was eased following the Edict of Milan by Constantine the Great in 313 AD, legalizing Christianity across the empire. Unlike its Balkan neighbours, Albania was divided between Catholicism and Orthodox Christianity. This was due to the fact that the north was influenced by the Roman Empire as well as other Catholic empires. Meanwhile, the south was under the jurisdiction of the Byzantine Empire, which had adopted Orthodox Christianity following the schism of 1054, though this led to a lack of religiosity within Albania due to there not being a single unified church for the entire population. Many people think that Islam first arrived to Albania following the Ottoman conquest into Eastern Europe. However, this was not the case, as Islamic presence was initially established during the time of Charles I, Anjou of Angevin, in which historians suggest he expanded his territory into Albania in 1275, using Muslim forces native to Luceria, a city in the south of Italy. Furthermore, there was a huge demand for Muslim carpenters and blacksmiths to build war machines in Albania during the summer of 1280, that it threatened to exhaust the skilled workers' pool for the construction of forts on the Italian coast. The Ottoman Empire had been established in the town of Sugut in 1299 under Sultan Osman I. The Turks had experienced rapid expansion, as by 1352 they had crossed the Bosphorus, though it was not until 1385 that the Ottomans had entered into Albania. This is because the Albanian noble Karl Fopia invited the Ottomans to suppress the forces of the noble Balsia II during the Battle of Savra. Many of the Albanian clans swore allegiance to the Ottomans. The Ottoman presence within the region of Greater Albania grew 4 years later in 1389 as they crushed the Albanian forces at Kosovo Polji, though momentum for the Ottomans had diminished following the bloody conquests of Tamerlane. It was not until 1415 to 1419, the Ottomans under the Sultan Mehmed I, that they managed to oust the local princes from southern Albania, to deprive them of their possessions and to establish the Ottoman military feudal order in their place. The pressure continued into the 1420s, when many Albanian principalities became vassals of the Ottoman Empire. One such example was the Albanian noble and clan leader Gjon Kastrioti of Kruge, who submitted to Ottoman suzerainty in 1425. Furthermore, in the same decade, the Ottomans began stationing garrisons throughout southern Albania to consolidate its rule, and in the following decade, in 1431, the Ottomans managed to capture Janin. The Ottoman hierarchy allowed for the Albanian clan chiefs to maintain their position, rule, and property, but they had to pay tribute and sometimes send their sons to the Ottoman courts as hostages and provide the Ottoman army with auxiliary troops. However, many Albanian clans and principalities did not recognize Ottoman authority, therefore not paying the tributary tax. Furthermore, there was Albanian resistance to Ottoman rule, most notably Skanderbeg in the mid-15th century, in which he led a 25-year-long rebellion starting in 1443 until his death in 1468, which had temporarily halted the Ottoman advances into Albania. Though following his death, the Ottomans were able to reassert control over Albania. Eventually, after 10 years, the region of Kruge fell to the Ottomans in 1478, and in the following year, the same fate occurred to Shkodër after a 15-month-long siege by the Ottomans. This officially marked the beginning of Ottoman rule in Albania. Furthermore, 22 years later, at the start of the 16th century in 1501, the Venetians finally evacuated Durrës. The Islamification of Albania was a slow and steady process conducted by the Ottomans. Initially, the Ottomans did not implement policies to actively convert the natives to Islam, but rather this happened sporadically. On a whole, the Ottomans largely tolerated their Christian subjects, though at times they also discriminated against them, making them second-class citizens with higher taxes and various legal restrictions, like being unable to take Muslims to court, having horses, weapons, or houses overlooking those of Muslims. The first Albanian converts to Islam occurred in the late 14th century following Ottoman incursions into the region, though the majority of the earliest converts to Islam were Albanians that worked within the Ottoman government, such as through the notorious Deveshirme system that the Ottoman Empire employed, in which young Christian slave boys were taken from their homes to be raised as Muslims for the sole purpose of serving their empire. One such example was that many were trained as soldiers for the Janissary cause. These Albanians were also sometimes raised as bodyguards for the sultans. The Muslim population of Albania also swelled due to the arrival of Yuruks, who were stationed in military outpost settlements. Though over the years Albanians did begin to accept Islam in large numbers. It is noted during the 16th and 17th century, the Ottomans began increasingly incentivizing conversions as they wanted loyal subjects to Constantinople. One such way was that Muslims had it easier for them to climb the social ladder. Furthermore, the homogeneous social structure of the rural population was also a factor in making the cases of conversion to the dominant religion by personal and social motives, so characteristics of the urban areas isolated and untypical in the countryside. The Ottomans did not aim to impose Islam on the rural population, since it would subsequently harm the military and economic interests of the state. One of the early forms of this was the substitution of the cultural identity and the gradual incorporation of the local aristocracy into the Ottoman military feudal class. Conversions to Islam varied between the different regions of Albania. Most notably, the Islamification in the north was much slower due to resistance by the Catholic Church. This was combined with the fact that the mountainous terrain of northern Albania made proselytization much harder. Another factor in the slow penetration of Islam was a strong tribal structure, especially in the north, which frequently prevented the spread of Islam beyond the ritual observation throughout the Ottoman period. Cities such as Leze and Shkodër were the first centers of the conqueror's administration and target of colonization. However, one of the earliest accounts of Albanians becoming Muslim was in 1467, when the local lords converted to Islam, and it is suggested they accounted for 8% of the Timor holders in the Sanjak of Debar. This can also be seen in the Sanjak of Shkodra among the dozens of feud holders in 1485, as there was one convert to Islam. Though some places in the northern areas of Greater Albania saw Islam become the dominant religion much faster. This is evident through the official Ottoman records of Nahia of Tetova across the border, which shows Muslim families outnumbering Christian families for the first time in 1545, where there were 2 more Muslim families than Christian families, and 38 out of the Muslim families had recently converted from Christianity. In the second half of the 16th century, parallel with the spread of Islam, saw the holders of large amounts of wealth who professed Islam gaining stronger positions in the cities. The role of Christians began to decline and they were forced to give up their place in key economic activities for Muslims. This eventually led to Christians converting to Islam in order to keep their positions, as the most powerful Christian urban classes strove for proximity with the Muslim ruling class. Another area that became predominantly Muslim in the 16th century was Opođa in Kosovo, when it reached a majority in 1591. Furthermore, the increasing Islamic presence within Albania caused tensions to rise between the Catholic Church towards Islam. This resulted in the Pope in 1594 inciting a rebellion amongst Catholic Albanians in the north, promising help from Spain, though this ultimately ended in failure. As a result of this, the Ottomans began force converting pockets of people to Islam. This can also be seen in the region of Reka, in which the Porte had forced Islam on its inhabitants to bring out pacification. Though by 1610, Ottoman archives showed that only 10% of the north of Albania were Muslim. However, eventually Catholicism began to dwindle across northern Albania. This is evident by the fact that places such as Leze saw sharp decreases in Catholicism between the 1630s to 1670s, where the number of Catholics declined by 50%. Forced conversions was not an uncommon theme during Ottoman rule in Albania. This is because following the Great Turkish-Austrian War in the late 17th century, a Christian counter counter-offensive against the Ottoman Empire was conducted between 1687 to 1690, in which the Albanian Catholics revolted against their Muslim overlords. The Ottoman Pasha of Pek, a town in south present-day Kosovo, retaliated by forcing the entire Albanian village to accept Islam. This prompted many Orthodox Christians in the Kosovo region to leave the place, in which they were replaced by Albanian beys. It is also noted that many Albanians left Christianity and converted to Islam due to the lack of power by the church. This is because cities such as Gor, a borderland region straddling contemporary northeastern Albania and southern Kosovo, had a Slavic Orthodox population which converted to Islam during the latter half of the 18th century due to the abolition of the Serbian Patriarch of Pek in 1766, and subsequently brought an unstable ecclesiastical structure. Another contributing factor that led to many Albanians converting to Islam was the advent of the Bektashi order. This was a Sufi mystic order that facilitated many conversions from Christianity to Islam. It first arrived to Albania between the 14th and 15th century. However, it was not until the 18th century that it became dominant in the Albanian-speaking regions. This is due to the construction of the Tegaje e Zalet gravel teke in 1780 under Asim Baba, who laid the foundations for the growth of the Bektashi order within Albania, and it was followed by the construction of more tekes throughout Albania, especially during the period between 1790 to 1825, in which the Bektashi order maintained a strong presence within the Albanian-speaking territories. Furthermore, throughout Ottoman rule in northern Albania, many Catholics began accepting Islam due to conflict with the Slavs. This is because sharing the same religion with the Ottoman authorities allowed northern Albanians to become allies and equals in the imperial system and gain security against neighbouring Orthodox Slavs. Unlike the north, people in central Albania professed Orthodox Christianity. Therefore, it experienced higher rates of Islamification during Ottoman rule. One such example was in the early 16th century, when it was reported that 5.5% of the population in the Sanjak of Elbasan were Muslim, which was the highest number in all the Albanian inhabited Sanjaks. One factor that facilitated an easier conversion process was that central Albania was a hub on the old Via Egnatia road that linked commercial, cultural and transportation connections, which were subject to direct Ottoman administrative control and religious Muslim influence. The Ottomans also saw the strategic importance of converting the Albanians to Islam. One such example was in the 1570s, when the Ottomans actively attempted to convert the natives to Islam in order to stop seasonal rebellions in Elbasan and Raqqa. Furthermore, it is estimated by 1582 as many as 170 Muslim households, of which 160 newly converted to Islam, were listed in a report in Elbasan. Meanwhile, a Greek traveller in the same century reported that in the city of Durrës there was no Christians. The ineffective power of the church was also present in central Albania. One such instance was the city of Berat, in which it became majority Muslim after 1670. This was caused by the lack of priests being able to provide religious services. According to M. Drinov's remarks, based on correspondence of Catholic envoys from their Albanian missions, the level of performance of the Catholic priests was extremely inadequate, and they were often the first to adopt Islam and lead their flocks into conversion. And at the same time, in the early 1670s, the Catholic priest Stefan Gaspari went to Durrës, in which he met many crypto-Christians, designated in the original by the Latin term of Christiani Occulti, who overtly professed the Mohammedan faith and secretly attended church to pray, confess their sins, and take Holy Communion. The region that experienced the least Islamification was in the south of Albania. This is because the Ottomans held the Orthodox Christians in higher regard in comparison to the Catholics, which was the predominant religion, just like those in central Albania. This is because the Porte viewed the Catholics with suspicion, as they were fierce enemies of Venice and Austria. Meanwhile, the Orthodox could rely and count on the government in Istanbul. Furthermore, they possessed superior infrastructure in comparison to the Catholics in Albania. Historians note that many conversions to Islam occurred in the lowlands of the Shkumbin River due to the fact it was more accessible to the Ottomans, in which they could apply pressure on the population to convert to Islam. The phenomena of people converting to Islam simply by name rather than action was also prevalent in the south of Albania. In the south, Islamification was not actively pursued by the Ottomans. This is evident by a low conversion rate. In the south of Albania, the phenomena of the aristocratic class accepting Islam was very common. It was reported in 1432 in the Sanjak of Arvanid that 50% of Sipahis were Muslim Albanians. The abandonment of Catholicism and the Orthodox faith by the Albanians was formal and employed as a conscious strategic move aiming at their survival and admittance to the hierarchy of the local Ottoman administration. Meanwhile, in the following century, during the 16th century, the Sanjaks of Vlora was found to be 1.8% Muslim. Meanwhile, the Sanjak of Ohrid was found to be 1.9% Muslim. As like all areas in Albania, the incompetency of the church played a vital role in causing many people to leave Christianity for Islam, most notably when a famine ravished Liberia in the 18th century, as the local bishop gave the threat of hell to those who broke their fast with milk. It was during this time that the Ottomans began to view the Orthodox Christians as traitors due to the Russian-instigated Orlov Revolt of 1770. This was exacerbated by the outbreak of the Russo-Turkish War in the late 18th century, as some Orthodox Christian Albanians rebelled against the Ottoman Empire, causing the Porte to implement forced conversion policies. They also implemented economic measures to stimulate conversions to Islam. By 1798, a massacre perpetrated against the coastal Orthodox Albanian villages of Shenvazil and Nevize Bubar by Ali Pasha, a semi-independent ruler, the Pashalik of Yanin, led to another sizable wave of conversions of Orthodox Albanian Christians to Islam. It is noted that the south of Albania was the only region within the Ottoman Empire during the 19th century that saw an increase in converts to Islam. The Bektashi Sufi order had its main strongholds in the south of Albania, especially their monastery located in Kanina. There was also other factors that caused people to convert to Islam that was not specific to one region or one event. One such example was when Albanian elders would encourage youngers to convert to Islam. This is due to the heavy taxation policies implemented by the Ottoman government, such as when the tax levied on the Christians in the Albanian communities in the 16th century only amounted to about 45 asses, and by the mid-17th century this increased to 780 access. In order to save the clans from hunger and ruin, the Albanian elders encouraged the youngers to convert to Islam. Another reason was due to social pressures in which the Ottoman system targeted men. Meanwhile, the women of the household normally remained Christian. These crypto-Christians later became known as Lara men. The Ottomans barred the non-Muslims from bearing arms, causing many to nominally accept Islam to enjoy this right. The church's inadequacy also played a role in Islamification, as throughout Ottoman rule in Albania, the illiterate clergy, a lack of clergy in certain areas, and the worship in another language other than Albania all culminated in Albanians abandoning Christianity in favor for Islam. And by the beginning of the 20th century, when Albania declared independence in 1912, the Muslims constituted 70% of the population, numbered at 20%, meanwhile the rest were Catholics at 10%. However, today only 60% of the population identify as Muslim. Furthermore, large portions of the population see themselves as non-religious.